Hello everybody, my name is James, hope you're doing well and welcome back to another video. And today we're going to be talking about some of the key talking points from qualifying for the Melbourne Grand Prix. If you enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Formula 1 content. Also make sure to follow me on X at James's Pit Lane, I'll leave a link in the description. But let's jump straight into the video. So we've just had qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix and now we finally have a good idea as to where teams are going into the 2025 season. Now, it was predicted after pre-season testing that McLaren would be the quickest car starting the season, and that is the case with both drivers locking out the front row, with Lando Norris on pole for the Melbourne Grand Prix and Oscar Piastri in second, and it was very, very close between them, just a few thousandths between them. And for me, one of the biggest surprises is Red Bull. You know, you look at practice in Australia and Red Bull were absolutely nowhere. Like, they were really, really struggling. But on Saturday, you know, they really changed that car around, to my surprise, because when Verstappen was talking about the balance being okay on Friday, and it was just a case of the car not coming alive, I thought it was going to be a really tough fix for them. But fair play, they turned it around, and on Saturday they had a really good car. Unfortunately, Liam Lawson wasn't able to make the most of it. He had issues in FP3, and then in qualifying he just couldn't get a lap together. Had a bit of a disaster in qualifying actually, and was knocked out in Q1. But Verstappen was challenging for pole, so a good turnaround for him following practice, and he ended up P3. Now, I think who also did a really good job in qualifying were Williams. You know, both drivers in Q3. That's seriously impressive. You know, as we know, team boss James Vowles, you know, made it clear before the season got underway that Williams' targets, you know, are for when the new regulations come in, you know, for 26, 27, 28. And I thought this was going to be like the 2021 Haas season for Williams based on the way they were speaking. But both drivers in Q3, that's really, really impressive, and Carlos Sainz ended up 9th and Alex Albon 6th. And I also think the Racing Bulls, the Red Bull Junior team, did a really good job. You know, I think Yuki Tsunoda drove really well. I think Isaac Hadjar drove really well as well. It was a shame Hadjar wasn't able to get into Q3. I think he was hampered a bit by the yellow flag at the end of Q2, but he still finished P11, which is very impressive. And then you've got Tsunoda, who puts the car in P5. That's a mega job. But one team that didn't do well in qualifying at all was Ferrari. Now, as we know, in testing, it looked like they were the second or third fastest team. You then look at practice, and they were flying in practice, especially in free practice too. It looked like it was going to be a battle for pole between McLaren and Ferrari. But my goodness, we get to Saturday, we get to qualifying, and that Ferrari is just nowhere. You know, Charles Leclerc, P7, Lewis Hamilton, P8, around 7/10 off pole. They're so far behind. I'm shocked how far behind Ferrari are. And while there were, you know, some moments in qualifying where the car looked a bit of a handful, you know, Hamilton, for example, spun in Q2. On the whole, it looked decent to drive. It looked okay to drive, but the time just wasn't there. And that's going to be a concern for Ferrari. And now Hamilton has responded to that really poor qualifying performance from the Scuderia, with him being quoted by Sky Sports F1 as saying, "I had a really good time out there today. Everything has been the first this weekend. My first practice sessions with Ferrari, my first qualifying. It's been a lot of work to really adapt. The car is so much different here to what I've experienced in the past. But it's been interesting. I definitely didn't know that we'd be 8/10 off today, but there's a lot to dissect for sure." So yeah, a difficult day for Ferrari, and I don't think Hamilton would have wanted to be behind his former teammate, George Russell. You know, even though Kimi Antonelli got knocked out in Q1, it did look like there was an issue with his Mercedes in qualifying. You know, it was running so low to the ground, but George Russell had a very good qualifying, and he was able to put his car into P4. Now, basically, Russell was at risk of losing that place. You know, at the end of Q2, Charles Leclerc was on a hot lap. He was going round turn 3. He came across a slow-moving George Russell, got affected by his dirty air, lost the rear end, and had to back out. But in fairness to George, he did stay as far to the left as possible to stay out the way. The incident was looked at by the stewards. It was noted, but it has been confirmed that there is no further investigation to this. And I think that's fair enough. Yes, Leclerc had to abandon his lap. He got affected by the dirty air. But when you look at George, he was trying to stay as far out the way as possible. So I think it's fair that he doesn't get a penalty, because I think it'd be pretty harsh if he lost like 3 grid positions for that. But that's going to be the video from me today. Thank you ever so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more videos, and until the next one, take care. Bye.